The modern-day protests, is it a protest or is it a riot? A protest and a riot are two distinct forms of collective action, differing in their nature, objectives, and methods. Here are the key differences between a protest and a riot. A protest is a public expression of dissent or disagreement, typically organized to draw attention to a specific issue, policy, or injustice. Protests aim to raise awareness, advocate for change, and exercise the right to free speech and assembly. The intent is generally to peacefully communicate grievances and bring about positive societal transformation. On the other hand, a riot is characterized by violent and chaotic behavior, often involving vandalism, looting, arson, and physical confrontations. Riots are typically unplanned and lack a clear objective beyond expressing anger or frustration. The main focus of a riot is often on destruction and disruption rather than constructive dialogue or peaceful resolution. Protests are generally conducted in a peaceful manner, emphasizing nonviolent methods such as marches, rallies, sit-ins, or boycotts. Participants may carry signs, chant slogans, and engage in peaceful civil disobedience to convey their message. Protests often adhere to legal frameworks and work within established guidelines to maintain order and safety. Riots, on the other hand, involve widespread violence, property damage, and disregard for the law. Participants in a riot may engage in aggressive and destructive behaviors, including throwing projectiles, vandalizing property, and engaging in physical altercations with law enforcement or counter-protesters. Riots are marked by an atmosphere of chaos, fear, and lawlessness. Protests have specific objectives, often tied to social, political, or economic issues. They seek to bring attention to grievances, raise public awareness, influence public opinion, and push for change through legal and peaceful means. Protests can result in various outcomes, including policy reforms, increased awareness, shifts in public opinion, and greater dialogue between stakeholders. Riots, on the other hand, lack clear objectives beyond expressing anger or frustration. The primary outcome of a riot is typically damage to property, harm to individuals, and disruption of social order. Riots can lead to a breakdown in trust between communities and law enforcement, increased polarization, and a negative perception of the underlying concerns that may have triggered the unrest. It is important to note that protests can occasionally turn violent and escalate into riots, often due to a combination of factors such as provocation, external agitators, or a breakdown of control. In such cases, it is essential to differentiate between those who engage in peaceful protest and those who resort to violence and destruction. Protests have long been an integral part of democratic societies, serving as a means for people to voice their concerns, advocate for change, and exercise their right to free speech. However, in recent times, the nature of protests has evolved, taking on new forms and presenting unique challenges. This video aims to critically examine modern-day protests and shed light on some of the issues that have emerged, tarnishing their overall impact and effectiveness. Additionally, we will explore the Million Man March and Martin Luther King Jr.'s March on Washington as two exemplary protests that have left a lasting impact on society. One of the major shortcomings of modern-day protests is the lack of clear objectives. Many protests now seem to be fueled by emotions and general discontent, without a specific goal in mind. The absence of a clearly defined agenda makes it difficult for the public, policymakers, and even the protesters themselves to understand what they are advocating for or how to address the concerns raised. As a result, the impact of these protests is often diluted and fails to bring about meaningful change. While peaceful demonstrations have historically been effective in bringing attention to important causes, there has been an alarming increase in the use of disruptive tactics and violence in modern-day protests. Instead of engaging in constructive dialogue and seeking common ground, some protesters resort to acts of vandalism, looting, and physical confrontation. These actions not only undermine the credibility of the protest, but also hinder the chances of building broad public support for the cause. Another concerning trend in modern protests is the deepening polarization and divisiveness they often generate. Rather than fostering dialogue and understanding, many protests have become platforms for amplifying extreme viewpoints and perpetuating an us versus them mentality. This polarization not only hampers meaningful discourse, but also exacerbates societal divisions, making it harder to find shared solutions and achieve lasting change. The advent of social media has transformed the landscape of protests, providing a platform for widespread dissemination of information and mobilization. While this can be a powerful tool for organizing and raising awareness, it has also given rise to a phenomenon known as slacktivism. The ease with which individuals can share hashtags, memes, and perform symbolic gestures online can create a false sense of activism, leading to a lack of sustained commitment and meaningful action. Likes, shares, and retweets do not necessarily translate into tangible change in the real world. While protests are intended to draw attention to pressing issues, they often come at the expense of public spaces and disrupt the daily lives of ordinary citizens. Road blockades, occupation of public parks, and large-scale demonstrations can impede the functioning of essential services, businesses, and transportation networks. This can alienate the very people the protests aim to mobilize, and instead generate resentment and opposition. Amidst the challenges faced by modern-day protests, the Million Man March and Martin Luther King Jr.'s March on Washington stand as exemplary demonstrations that have left an indelible impact on society. The Million Man March, organized on October 16, 1995, in Washington, D.C., brought together African American men from across the United States to advocate for unity, justice, and social reform. Led by prominent civil rights activist Louis Farrakhan, the march emphasized personal responsibility, family values, and community empowerment. By showcasing a disciplined and peaceful gathering of individuals committed to promoting positive change, the march garnered broad public support and raised awareness about the systemic challenges faced by African American communities. Similarly, Martin Luther King Jr.'s March on Washington, held on August 28, 1963, is a watershed moment in American civil rights history. The march aimed to advocate for civil and economic rights for African Americans and called for an end to racial segregation and discrimination. With Martin Luther King Jr.'s iconic "I Have a Dream" speech as the centerpiece, the march brought together diverse groups and showcased the power of peaceful assembly and nonviolent protest. It galvanized public opinion, led to the passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, and became a symbol of hope for generations to come. While modern-day protests face various shortcomings, such as the lack of clear objectives, disruptive tactics, polarization, slacktivism, and disruption of public spaces, it is crucial to recognize the positive examples that have shaped history. The Million Man March and Martin Luther King Jr.'s March on Washington exemplify the power of peaceful assembly, clear objectives, and community empowerment. By drawing lessons from these iconic protests and addressing the weaknesses of modern demonstrations, we can strive for more effective and impactful protests that lead to meaningful and lasting change in our societies. Thank you for taking the time to watch my video. Please drop a like and subscribe, share these videos, and comment on these videos. Thanks for your support, and if there are any subjects you would like me to make a video about, please add that in the comments section.